Hey everyone, and a massive welcome to all the 8th graders and parents joining us for this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today. So, we're covering a massive chunk of time, 270 years of history, to be exact. That is a whole lot of powdered wigs and musket smoke. Now, if you've ever stared at a history textbook and felt like it was just this endless, dry list of dates you had to memorize, well, you're definitely not alone. But today, we're going to completely flip that script. We're transforming this year-end review for the 1607 to 1877 period from just a dusty collection of facts into a fascinating, connected story. Because, history isn't just about what happened, it's really about how everything connects.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. We'll start with why history needs order, then move into making the past plain, connect some historical dots, go over key insights and homework, and wrap things up with education and biblical morality.
All right, part 1, why history needs order.
Let's be totally honest for a second here. The text expectations for this timeline, 1607 to 1877, it can feel pretty overwhelming. A lot of times it just feels like a random soup of dates, names, and places that you're somehow supposed to cram into your brain right before the exam. And if you treat history as just a bunch of random, isolated dates, it feels completely disorganized. Plus, frankly, it's impossible to remember long-term. Your brain just doesn't like holding on to disconnected facts. But when you view history as a connected story, kind of like a giant puzzle where every single piece locks into the next, well, everything changes. Suddenly, the timeline reveals these rich patterns. You start to actually see the causes, and you clearly understand the results. It goes from just mindless memorization to genuine understanding.
Which brings us to part 2, making the past plain.
The ultimate solution for all this historical chaos can actually be found in a biblical mandate for clarity. Habakkuk 2:2 says, "Write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets, so that a herald may run with it." This is super profound. It reminds us that important truths are meant to be recorded clearly. Why? Well, so that others can easily understand them and, even more importantly, take action on them. Making things plain, organizing events in a clear, accessible way, is exactly what a timeline does for history.
So I want you to just pause and think about this for a second. How can organizing history clearly help us better understand truth and learn from the past? From a biblical morality perspective, studying history with this kind of clarity doesn't just help you ace a test. It helps us recognize God's faithfulness throughout the centuries, and it really equips us to make much wiser choices for our own future. It's all about learning from the people who walked the path before us.
Moving right along to part 3, connecting the historical dots.
Now, taking that spiritual concept of making things plain, let's look at the really practical academic side of building our timeline, specifically for the STAR test. We can anchor our whole timeline on 3 major pillars: 1607, 1776, and the period between 1865 and 1877. The STAR test heavily relies on you understanding the sequence of major historical events. By locking these 3 foundational pillars into your mind, you're building a structural framework. Once you know exactly where these sit, you can easily place all the other historical events right around them.
So, our very first anchor is 1607, the founding of Jamestown. Now, this isn't just a date. It is literally the first domino in the story of colonial America. And those early days, they were all about mere survival. I mean, at one point during the starving time, colonists were so desperate they actually ate shoe leather. But by understanding those immense early struggles and then the eventual successes of this first permanent English settlement in North America, you immediately grasp how those survival decisions shaped all the colonial growth that came after. It completely sets the stage.
And that brilliantly illustrates our next anchor, 1776, the Declaration of Independence. When you put this document right after years and years of mounting colonial tension and unrest, it makes total sense, right? It wasn't just some random event out of nowhere. It marks this massive, decisive step towards self-government and the absolute inevitable push into the turning points of the Revolutionary War.
Finally, we reach 1865 to 1877, Reconstruction. This era came immediately after the absolute devastation of the Civil War. The whole goal was rebuilding the South and trying to reunite a deeply fractured nation. When you recognize its exact place on the timeline, it perfectly explains why the successes and the really deep failures of the Reconstruction era still ripple through and affect the United States we live in today. It is the direct result of the war that came right before it.
All right, part 4, key insights and homework.
Let's lock in our preparation with 3 core takeaways. Number 1, timelines reveal the patterns and connections in history. Number 2, and honestly, this is a huge one, knowing when something happened is the absolute secret to explaining why it happened. Context is literally everything. And number 3,
The START test will consistently test your ability to sequence these events correctly. If you master the order, you master the test.
All right, students, go ahead and grab a screenshot of these questions, or just jot them down in your notebooks really quick. These 5 specific questions are designed for active practice. 1. What year was Jamestown founded? 2. Why is the Declaration of Independence important? 3. Name one major event from Reconstruction. 4. How does a timeline help you study? And 5. Place these in chronological order: the Civil War, Jamestown, and the American Revolution. Really practicing these is going to reinforce your chronological mastery and make you completely bulletproof for the exam.
And finally, Part 5, Education with Biblical Morality.
Let's shift gears a bit as we close out this explainer and look at the philosophy behind this whole series. Romans 8:6-7 promises true peace of mind to everyone who keeps their minds spiritual. And this is so deeply connected to how we study history. When we look at the past from a perspective of biblical morality, we aren't just memorizing dry facts. We're keeping our minds engaged with spiritual truths. We start to recognize God's hand in history, we learn from human mistakes, and we actually experience that promised peace of mind as we engage with the material.
Because the crucial point here is that education without morality will hurt. The HeroesMart Academy Godly Learners series intertwines these two things because simply being smart, having every single historical date memorized perfectly, but doing it without a foundation of moral guidance, that inevitably leads to making bad choices that can cause some lasting harm.
So I really want to leave you with this powerful thought to carry with you today. What is the actual point of being smart and supposedly educated if you just continue to make choices that hurt yourself and others? True education marries knowledge with morality. It challenges you to take your understanding of the past and use it wisely to build a much better future. Thank you all so much for diving into this connected story of history with me today. Keep making those connections, keep seeking the truth, and I'll catch you next time.